Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with something a little bit different from what I usually review. We have one of the How to Train Your Dragon figures, and I know many people were looking forward to this toy line. I recently spotted these guys at my local Target, so I went ahead and I picked two of them up. There were quite a few others, and I didn't grab them all just because I'm not entirely sure if I want to collect the line. But when I actually had picked them up, because I was just really curious about this line, I was really intrigued to see what the figures were going to look like. And when I had picked the figure up at the store, started to look at it, I was pretty impressed with how nice it looked. So I went ahead, grabbed two for now, and then I'll review them, see how I like them, and then if I like them, then maybe I'll get more later. I don't know, we'll see. But you can see this one is the Deadly Nadder and Astrid, and it's a pretty cool looking version of a dragon, that's for sure. And another thing that's really neat, you can see up there, it states real feel dragon wings, and has kind of like a rubbery sort of material. Well, definitely a rubber, but it's like an interesting material. Almost feels like what I would expect an actual wing of a dragon to feel like. And then, of course, you can see the packaging looks pretty cool. Definitely not half bad. You know, I think about as good as it gets for something like this. Definitely has the How to Train Your Dragon style to it. You can see some of the other figures here on the back, one of which is toothless. And this is actually the other one that I snagged because I thought it looked pretty neat. But the figure, again, looks pretty cool, so let's go ahead, pop it out of the box, and check it out. So here is our Astrid figure, and we'll go ahead and stand that up, potentially, if it stands. Doesn't seem to want to. Maybe I need to readjust the legs. There we go. And then our dragon itself, which we'll bring in here and try to get into a standing position as well. And there we go. I think the wings are probably doing more for it standing than the actual legs are currently. But again, you can see they look pretty decent. And of course, the human figure is something I'm interested in, but I was more so interested in the dragon itself. And I will say, the dragon looks pretty cool. I think we'll bring in the human first just because, but like when you get nice and close, look at the fine detail on that. That is a really, really well done figure, and there's quite a bit of life even to the figure itself. Like the sculpt looks really nice. I haven't seen a whole lot. I did watch the trailer, of course, for the new film, but I didn't pay a whole lot of attention, so I don't know if the likeness is spot on here. I'll be able to tell a little bit better once I actually see the movie, but you can see the hair is sticking forward pretty far off of her, and again, there's a good bit of waviness and fine detail to the hair. It's painted with a nice brownish tone. She has like a little headband on there. The eyes look really good. The lips are painted out. Everything looks really impressive as far as that goes. As you move down into the body, you can see there is definitely no laziness when it comes to these figures, like the, at least as far as the human goes. There's a lot of different variation of color, like you can see like a maroon for her shirt, or like a dark purple, you could say actually, more than a maroon, but you can also see some black there on her sleeve, then it changes to a blue, then it changes back to a black, and then you've got the hands again sculpted out and painted. And I do apologize, I'm a little bit sick right now, so kind of dealing with that on top of everything, trying to get a little bit better as far as being sick. So if my voice sounds off and everything, and you know, I just sound a little off, that's why. But as you move down again, you've got the outfit here. You can see leading down. This looks like it actually maybe comes up off of her. Yeah, definitely you can see it actually lifts up off of her, and that again is really impressive as far as the sculpt. It's also painted with, it looks like a black, but then certain ways the light hits it, it almost has more of like a dark brown sort of a look. As you move down, you can see, of course, the pants are sculpted very nicely. You've got wrinkles and creases and everything in the pants as you move down. And then she has some really cool boots as I'm losing her, dropping her right here, but you can see her really cool boots that she has going on, which do have a nice greenish tone. Almost looks like she was just stomping around in a muddy swamp or something with the way that these boots look. But as far as the articulation goes, we do have neck articulation, left and right. I don't know. Oh, yeah, it does go forward and back. Look at that. That's pretty nice. The arm articulation does come out away from the body. It also can swivel. Again, no elbow articulation or anything. I almost expected it to have that. No swivel. No swivel in the midsection, but you do have leg articulation, which does come out. She can do some pretty cool splits. Also goes forward and then back, and you also have knee articulation forward and back, and can also swivel, and that's about it as far as her articulation goes. But definitely a nice looking human figure. It's actually really well done, and because the dragon is a bit larger, we're going to go ahead and readjust the camera here. But you can see once we bring the dragon in, look at how good that looks. Like, they really put quite a bit into this, even painting out some pinkish tones in the nostrils, which I think looks quite nice for the figure. There we go. I was trying to get my camera to focus. The skin texture also looks really good. There's all sorts of variation to the scales. You can see some of those pinkish tones there are circling around the eye. You also have some light blues around the eye, and then of course a really, really nice looking eye. I don't think it's paint. I think it's a decal applied to the eye, but I really quite like that because it does give it a very lifelike look, in my opinion. As you move up, you can see the horn looks really quite nice. It also has some very impressive fine detail to that area as well. You can see some light, sort of off-white tones for the horn, and as well as the horns here moving off of the back of the head. Again, the skin texture is really impressive, and so is the paintwork. You can see a really nice bluish tone for the majority of the color of the upper side of the dragon, but then you have this light tone for the lower part, and we also have like the straps and stuff here on the dragon that are all painted out with the dark brown, which is definitely really nice. You have, oh, I thought it was going to be the lower jaw that articulates, but it's the upper jaw. I was going to say you do have an articulated jaw, and inside the mouth you can see the teeth are all sculpted pretty decently. They don't have a super sharp look or anything to them, but they look fairly decent. You can also see that the paintwork is applied pretty smoothly. I don't really see much sloppiness, painted with like an off-white. And then we have a pinkish tone for the inside of the mouth with a nice gloss coat. We can see the tongue sculpted pretty decently, and yes, the detail does extend up there into the inside of the mouth, as does the pink paintwork, and that again looks really good. We also have that nice gloss coat up there as well, and when you open the mouth you can kind of see the skin stretching and everything right there. The lower jaw does feature some pretty nice looking skin texture as well. As we move back here into the body and the wing hits the camera, you can see the blue kind of squiggling there where it transitions to the lighter tone. That's basically the design that we have going on as far as the paintwork goes. But we also see some more of the straps there for the saddle of the dragon, which is nice. The saddle itself, again, sculpted pretty decently and painted pretty decently. And I'm pretty intrigued to get her on the dragon at some point in the very near future here. You can see the light tone does move down along the underside. The skin texture, again, looking really impressive as we move through. We also have that kind of How to Train Your Dragon logo down here. I don't know if it does anything, kind of look like maybe it did because it's sort of like indented into the figure. But as we move up here, I guess we'll go to the top, you can see the wings, and the wings do have that nice rubbery real feel to them, which is a very nice addition to the figure. And as you get nice and close, you can see a really nice cluster of scales following out through the arm of the dragon, as well as some pretty impressive fine detail within the skin of the wings. We have this very cool red-orange that leads down along the bottom of the wing, and then some very interesting patterns here that don't really look that great in my opinion. I think these look a little generic as far as like this being a fairly lifelike dragon outside of this area, but it doesn't take away from the figure. I think it still looks okay, but it's just not as impressive as some of the other areas. But you can see it's like a light green, and they're all outlined with a yellowish tone. There isn't any paintwork for the nails, unfortunately, for the dragon, which is actually surprising considering the fact that they actually have quite a bit of paintwork added to this figure overall. Of course, the other wing looks pretty much the same. You do have some pretty interesting spikes following along the back here of the dragon that disappear as you lead down past the hip region. There is a little variation of color to the blues. It looks like it's similar to Mattel, where the figure is kind of created in that color, and then there's like some other tones of color just sort of jumbled within, where we see like a speckling on a lot of Mattel figures. We can see that here with this one with like a brown. And then as you move out into the tail gets really quite impressive looking with all sorts of kind of like spikes and stuff leading off of it. It would have been super cool to actually see all of those painted out. I don't know if in the film they're, colored the same way as the ones here in the back. I would think maybe they are. But again, it's been a little bit since I had seen the trailer for the film. But I'm definitely going to be seeing it once it comes out. But you can see there's a little bit of curve to the tail as well, and the detail looks really impressive the entire way out. You can see the light tone, though, does end before we actually reach the tail. And then, of course, we have the legs, which the wings are going to try to hide. You can see the skin texture of the legs looks really good. We can see the musculature as you move down through the thigh and calf. The knee is also really nicely done. And then you've got a pretty nice looking foot sculpt, if my camera would kindly focus on that foot sculpt, there you can see some scoots moving down the toes. The nails are unpainted, but they do have a gloss coat on them, so they do have kind of like that, nail-like shine. And you can see the opposing leg over there. And of course, you're going to see pretty much the same thing when we turn the dragon around, except for the fact that the leg is trailing more so on this side as opposed to leading on the other side. And the undersides of the wings are just the blue. There isn't any variation of color down here, sadly. But it is a pretty darn cool figure, I can definitely say that. Interestingly enough, I kind of expected there to be like a button, maybe to like operate the wings, but it looks like it's just straight up like articulation, I guess, so it's up to you. You can see that they do articulate very nicely, though. Like, again, the fact that they are a rubber reel feel absolutely helps when it comes to the articulation aspect, but they do move really smoothly. Again, we did see the articulated jaw, which I think to operate that biting feature, you would just press on these horns on the back of the head. And then you have the leg articulation, which does move forward and back really, really smoothly. It doesn't come out away from the body or anything, just forward and back. It looks like there would be a seam here for the tail, but that definitely isn't moving for me. But it is a really cool dragon. Like, I can definitely say they have done a pretty good job on these figures from what I've seen so far. As far as a size goes, for a length from the snout to the tail, about 10.5 inches, or around 26.5 centimeters, and then for a height to the top of those horns, about 3.5 inches or 9 centimeters, and then for Astrid here, you are looking at about 3 inches or 7.5 centimeters, roughly, maybe closing in on 8, but not quite. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A Human Being next to our dragon and human figure. And you can see again that they aren't quite in the Mattel size range. I think you can very clearly see that there when it comes to Muldoon next to Astrid. The size is quite different, and obviously they don't match up at all. So unfortunately, we can't kind of interchange these with the Mattel line, but you can get a pretty good feel, I think, for the size of the dragon itself. Unfortunately, as well, I don't have any other figures from the How to Train Your Dragon lines, like the older ones or anything. I really never collected those. My son did when he was younger, but I don't know whatever happened to them. They're probably locked up in a storage bin somewhere or something at this point, because he kind of stopped playing with them as he got older and moved over to Godzilla, and that's where his primary interest has been for years now. But you can see again that the figure does have a fairly decent size to it. Again, since I don't have any other How to Train Your Dragon figures, I don't really have anything good to compare these with, so I guess just a few random Mattel comparisons would help. Here is a, standard size Velociraptor next to the dragon, showing you that the dragon is a little bit bigger. But then once we move on from that size range and we get a little bit larger in like the Wild Roar size range, we can see that obviously the dragon is a bit smaller now than the Mattel figures. So hopefully when it comes to those two figures, I've given you a pretty decent idea of the size of this dragon. If there's something else that you guys can think of that maybe a comparison would work better with, let me know. I can use those again moving forward and stuff, but I really can't come up with much of anything, especially because I don't really collect dragons too often, but this figure was pretty darn nice. I really couldn't resist it. So this brand new How to Train Your Dragon, Deadly Nadder and Astrid are pretty darn cool. I was really impressed. Again, when I had seen these in the store, I instantly picked them up, and then I was basically just standing there debating for a few minutes and thought, you know what, I don't collect dragons all that often, but these are probably some of the nicest toy type dragon figures that I've ever seen, so I'm definitely going to grab these. And I know there was a lot of interest from many people when it comes to this toy line. Many people have been talking about it to me for quite a little while now leading up to this, so I figured, I might as well just grab it on top of, again, adding it to my collection, but also to show it off to you guys if you were interested in this line. But I think, again, it's probably some of the coolest figures I have seen when it comes to How to Train Your Dragon, obviously taking on a more realistic look for the live-action film, and I really quite like that. I think the sculpts of these are stupendous. The fine detail is extremely impressive on these figures. The sculptor of this dragon, at least, I can't say for the same for all of them, but at least as far as this dragon goes, really did a great job of hammering out some crazy nice fine detail through the course of the entire figure, even leading out into the rubber reel feel wings. The paintwork as well is really well done for the most part. I would have liked to have seen some nail paint on the figure, but honestly, that's really about my biggest complaint, and that's, a pretty good thing to be able to say, because because we do have paintwork that looks pretty nice from head to tail. Again, the tail actually doesn't really have any variation of color to it. Maybe the spikes out there being painted would have been pretty cool, but it still looks pretty nice for being a mass-produced factory painted toy. So I think I have to give them, you know, at least a thumbs up on the amount of paintwork that they've applied to this, giving it a pretty nice look. Again, painting out like all the straps and the saddle and everything, and then some of the spikes moving down along the back, good bit of variation of color out on the wings. It definitely looks pretty good as far as the paintwork, and I love the eyes. The eyes look super cool on it. It does have some fairly fun playability. You know, it has some nicely articulated wings, articulated legs, and an articulated jaw. No actual like action feature buttons or anything, which some people may look at as being a downside, but at the same time, I really quite like just articulated figures, so I actually quite like the fact that there isn't any buttons that I've noticed anyway. If you guys know of something on this figure that maybe operates the action features, let me know and I'll go ahead and give it a shot and put up like a shorts video for it, but I can't find anything as far as that goes. But I really quite like you know, the articulation aspect. It could have had a little more like articulation in the tail or something, but it is what it is. I also do like the real feel wings on top of everything. And Astrid is a pretty nice human figure, very nicely sculpted and very nicely painted. I have to give them props as far as that goes. I feel like the sculpt and paintwork may be even better than a lot of the Mattel humans that we've had. It looks really impressive on the figure. So, overall, it's definitely worth picking up, especially if you are a fan of How to Train Your Dragon. So make sure you check your local Target. I'd imagine they're going to come to Walmart as well, but I can't say for sure. But if you have the opportunity to pick this up, I definitely recommend grabbing it. And of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.